In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to grow figs. You're all going to love this. Stay tuned. Well, hello everyone and welcome to another very exciting episode here on the MIgardener channel. As I said in the beginning, you're gonna love this episode because it's on figs. Now, figs is one of our most frequently requested growing guides, but it's been a long time coming to find a really good fig tree that would meet our needs, and primarily our needs for our growing zone. Here in Michigan, we don't have very many figs, if any, that will survive. And so, as we talked about in our pomegranate growing guide, we're going to use the assistance of kind of a microclimate to help us out because we are zone 6 here. However, zone 6, also zone 5 depending on the year. So because Lake Huron does act as a microclimate for some years to, depending on how the winter goes, we might have a really nice mild winter that is very easy on trees, allowing us to grow some of the things like figs. But we want to also kind of, we're not big into gambling, so I wanted to increase my chances of success even a little bit more, and that's why we're planting up against this this wall on our shed, which is going to absorb some of that sunlight and radiate it out through the night. And that's going to be a big ticket to our success. But as is, what we're planting is a Chicago hardy fig. Now these are hardy to zone 5. We are zone 6 here, which helps us out. But I find that just because they're zone hardy to zone 5 does not mean that they're actually going to do extremely well in zone 5. They typically do better in zone 6, and they'll do amazing in zone 7. So zone 7, 8, things like that. Now, when we plant our plants, we're going to see there wasn't much root ball there. What we're finding is that when you get these plants from the supplier, sometimes they up pot them too soon, kind of assuming that you're going to leave them in their pot for a long time. We're not like that. So what we want to do is, because these are figs are one of the only plants that you can do this with because they readily set down vines, or they readily set down roots, much like a vine. And so much like a tomato, all we're going to do is we're going to plant it deep. And we're going to plant it extra deep so that it gets lots of root development. And the deeper we plant it, the better it's going to do, because it's going to pull moisture from deep down in the soil to help reduce stress. It's going to set down roots, which are going to help with nutrient and water uptake. And so we just buried that by about maybe 3 or 4 inches deeper than it was. Not too much deeper, but definitely all that will help. So now all we're going to do is firm around that soil. I think oftentimes I see gardeners not doing this enough because they think they're going to kill the plant. With the right type of soil, you can't really overpack the soil. And so since we're growing in pure compost, which we'll talk about when it comes to the soil type here, since we're going in pure compost, the soil has really good air gaps, and you're just reducing all those bigger ones to make sure that the soil is really nice and settled around the roots. All right, so now that we got the plant planted, let's talk about watering, soil, sunlight, and fertilizing. So when it comes to, let's just talk about soil first, why not? So as I said, we're growing in pure compost, but you can afford to grow in a more heavy clay soil. Figs are very forgiving with the soil type, but if you're growing in a zone that's a little kind of risky to be growing in, it's best to grow in a very nutrient dense, full of organic matter soil. So compost is pretty much that. It's going to be very well draining, very porous, loose, and fluffy. And that really helps those roots penetrate through. Now, if you are living in a zone that, like 7, 8, 9, where they really do thrive very well, you can afford to plant in kind of a more clay mix soil because they are quite forgiving. Now, the plant obviously will still prefer the compost, won't be complaining. It's just you can be a little more tolerant with your soil type. Now, what I will say when it comes to soil is that always for figs, you want a pH of neutral. Now, the next thing with growing your figs is sunlight. Now, sunlight for growing figs is very important, but not as important as other plants, which is why I love growing figs. That's why they make amazing house plants. They actually don't need that much sun. They need about 4 to 6 hours of full sun, and they would really like some filtered sun. So that's why we have them in this spot that's, we have a big maple tree. It's gonna get some nice filtered sun that way. And then we have a nice open sky for some of that full sun. And then where this fig tree is here, it's going to get some, also some more filtered sun in the evening. So it's going to get a great mix of sun exposures, which is going to really help it out. Now the next thing is with fertilizing. Since we just fertilized this, or since we just planted this fig, we don't want to fertilize for at least 3 months. I say this with all of your deciduous trees, and we talked about all of our other fruit trees in our growing guides. You do not want to fertilize in the first 3 months because you want to encourage those roots to go out. If you fertilize right at the base, the plant's just going to say, well, I have my food and I have my water, why go anywhere? And your root ball is going to stay really small. And your roots are the only thing keeping the plant alive, because the roots store the energy for the following year. So if your roots are very small, it's not a lot of there's not a lot of places for that energy to go. And so you'll find that the plant grows really well, but then dies because there's no energy stored in the roots. And I think oftentimes people really neglect that. And they follow kind of how the plant looks above, but they never see what's going on down below. And then when the plant dies, that's when they find out what goes on down below, because they pull the plant up and say, whoa, the plant looked really healthy and now there's no roots. I wonder what happened. It's because you're fertilizing too darn early when you plant the plant. So a very easy fix. Just don't make that mistake. I see so many people doing it, and it's a very easy fix. But after the 3 months, what do we want to do? Very high nitrogen fertilizer. So as we say with all of our deciduous trees, basically trees that will lose their leaves and go dormant for a little bit, all of your deciduous trees need a very high nitrogen fertilizer. Obviously, on this channel, we use Trifecta Plus on everything. That's nothing new. But a lot of times people don't have access to Trifecta Plus, so I always say as a good alternative, fish emulsion, which is about a 511, still pretty high in nitrogen, not as high as I would like. So I would say my number one would be blood meal. Blood meal, and if you don't have blood meal, then go to fish emulsion. But both are going to be very good sources of nitrogen that are going to help the plant stay green, really grow fast for you, and that's all you have to worry about until the fall. And then around October, early October, mid-October, you want to come back and you want to fertilize with a high phosphorus fertilizer. And that high phosphorus is going to get the plant, again, ready. Phosphorus deals with root development, and you don't want to necessarily use phosphorus fertilizer in the beginning when you should worry about the leaf growth, because the leaves in the growing season are what produces that energy that's going to store down in the roots. And then you come back with the phosphorus that's going to kind of ready the roots for winter. And I think that's a common misconception, is they always think that phosphorus, even though it is good for root development, during the growing season, you want leaf development, and the roots will then store that energy later. So there's that. Then also another thing comes with watering. Because these are figs, they like lots of water. But again, too much of anything can be a bad thing. So we typically say a gallon a week is good. I typically give them a gallon about maybe every 3 days or so, because in raised beds they tend to dry out faster, and also we really want to make sure that they're getting the water that's essential for plant growth and root development. So I find that watering a gallon every 3 days is totally fine, and they won't mind it at all. But make sure they're at least getting a gallon a week, and they're going to do great. You have to remember, figs are Mediterranean, and this is not a Mediterranean climate whatsoever. So I wish it was, but it's not. So you have to kind of see what they kind of get, and then apply it to what they're getting in your zone. So just kind of make up for those differences. But I think that's really about it. One final thing that I always do get asked is figs. How do we prune them? How do we take care of them? Will they get really tall? These right here, the Chicago hardy figs, they will get tall, but rarely will they get tall. If you're growing another type of fig, make sure to keep them pruned below 7 feet because they will get 15, 20 feet tall. And while that seems like a novel idea, the leaves are really large and they will actually shade out much of the garden if you have them planted next to other things. So when they get big, they get really big. And I think for a home garden setting, I'd much rather prefer pruning them underneath maybe 6 feet, keeping them right around 6 feet. And all that's going to do is it's going to push lots of new side growth, which is going to further help with fruit production later. So that's just my personal preference. That's what I'm going to be doing to make sure that these stay nice and compact, because we're going to be planting other plants in this bed as well. So we want them to have good sunlight and access to that sun as well. So that's all there is to growing figs. Hopefully you all enjoyed. If you have any comments, post them in the comments box below. I always appreciate your comments and feedback. But if you also have any questions, post those below as well. And if you have any desire to see any other growing guides, make sure to check out our playlist. We have over, I think, like almost 35 complete growing guides now, adding to them all the time. There's gonna be lots more coming. And you can check them out at MIgardener.com. Go to the media tab and you can see growing guides, and that's going to give you full access to free growing guides, much like this one, or we have a playlist on YouTube that contains all those as well. But still check out MIgardener.com because it's loaded with all other types of free information that you will find very valuable to get your garden growing big or going home. So that's all I got for you today. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed. Make sure to click that like button and that subscribe button. That always helps us out, and it'll also help you gain access to more information that you probably didn't know or probably will be able to use sometime down the line. So I will talk to you all later. This is Luke from the MIgardener channel reminding you to grow big or go home. We'll see you later. Bye.